Pittsburgh Penguins fans, happy Friday, October 21st. For today's episode, we have a special crossover with Jay Forster of Locked On Blue Jackets to preview the game on Saturday night in Columbus. This will be the first of the Penguins' 5-game road trip that will span a full week before they go to Western Canada. As for an update on Jake Guentzel, Mike Sullivan said he continues to be evaluated and he will be going on the road trip. Did not rule him out for the game, but right now, hard to see how he plays this game. So here comes the special crossover right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good news is the Blue Jackets are riding a 2-game winning streak. The bad news is the rules say we have to play the Pittsburgh Penguins on Saturday night. So I figured to save me from having to have opinions about the Pittsburgh Penguins, I would get my my guy Hunter of Locked On Penguins to come and talk about them instead, because he probably enjoys doing that a lot more than I do. So how's it going, Hunter? The Penguins are getting off to a pretty hot start this season.
Yeah, 3-0-1 through their first 4 games. It's always, fun to record a show with you, Jay. And, it's always great when these two teams get together, even though I think it's kind of like a big brother, little brother rivalry these last several years. But it's still like the games are usually still pretty competitive, even, no matter who the head coach is and no matter, how good the Jackets are versus how bad they are. It's only a quick drive for the Penguins there. But yeah, they've won 3 of their first 4 games. They scored 18 goals in 3 home games to start the season. They've been red hot there. Had a little bit of a struggle against Montreal. They probably should have been able to close out that game. But I will gladly take 7 out of 8 points and I will gladly take being first place in the Metropolitan Division through at least the first week or 2 of the season.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like every team has one of those games where they just turn up and it's Montreal or Arizona or Chicago, and it's just like, you know what, not tonight. But I guess let's start off with kind of the team as a whole. I feel like the Penguins are one of those teams that never really seem to do much in the off season, and then they turn up for the regular season, and you're like, oh, how did they get better? So my question is, I guess, when will the Penguins submit to the ravages of time and accept that all of their good players are a million years old?
Not until I think they start being truly washed. I know they're in their 30s right now, but Sid, top 5 in points right now. He hasn't missed a beat. Evgeny Malkin, a lot of people wrote him off during the offseason. He's off to a great start. I think he has a point in all 4 games. Chris Letang had a bad game on Monday. He has 5 to 7, 6 to 8 of those every year. The anti-Letang people in this fan base will tell you that it's way more. They're wrong. They all are off to great starts. And of course, Jay, your boy Jake Guentzel, who probably will not be playing on Saturday night, is also off to a very hot start this season. 3 goals in the first 4 games. I predicted that he would score 50 this year. Hopefully he's not out for too long so that he can make that happen. But, as long as they keep playing at this elite level, they're going to be one of the best teams in the league. They're as long as they're playing at that, they will have as good of a shot as almost anyone, I think, to win another Stanley Cup in this era. And the top line's been cooking. Malkin actually has good line mates this year with Jason Zucker and Brian Rust. He also has a good defenseman to give him the puck a lot more in Jeff Petrie. For as good as John Marino was last offseason in the defensive zone, he brought hardly any offense to this team. You're already seeing the reward with having Petrie with him. It works so much better when you have someone with an offensive ability like him. So they definitely didn't do a lot during the offseason, but the changes that they did make, especially on defense, they're reaping those rewards right now for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like the beauty of a good team is that you don't really have to do a lot. It's just little tweaks. And I think, Jeff Petrie, of the little bit of him I've seen this season, I don't go out of my way to watch Penguins games typically, but if they're on, I'll watch them. I've liked what I've seen from him. He seems like a pretty decent upgrade. But the guy that I want to talk about, the guy that I feel like never really gets the reputation that he deserves, I think. Let's talk Tristan Jarry. We love goalies on Locked On Blue Jackets. Tristan Jarry, I think, had a phenomenal season last season. Unfortunate They got that injury in the playoffs, but he again is looking pretty hot to start this season. So what's up with Tristan Jarry? Is he ever going to get the recognition that he deserves from this
I
fan
think
base?
some people won't truly recognize him until he actually plays well in the playoffs. He was about to get that chance last year until Anders Lee had other ideas and accidentally crashed and broke his foot late in the regular season. But, he is picking up right where he left off from the last regular season when he was playing very well, had over a 920 save percentage, was top 10 in goals saved above expected. Right now, through 3 starts, save percentage over 950, goals against average below 2, top 5 in goals saved above expected. I think only Jake Ottinger, Eric Comrie, and Carter Hart somehow are above Jarry right now. Do not see Carter Hart having a good start to the season, that's for sure. But
something's happening in Philadelphia, and I'm not sure what it is.
I don't understand what's going on there. It's hopefully they'll bottom out soon enough, but that's definitely a lot better of a start than I expected to with the Flyers. But with Jarry, excuse me, he's continuing to stay aggressive. He's bailing them out when he needs to. Like last night against the Kings, I don't know what's going on with this cough here. They had a really bad first period, and the Penguins, they could not really get out of their zone. They were being suffocated in the neutral zone, and he was really having to make a lot of good saves in the first period, and that allowed the Penguins to really settle in. They were able to get the first goal, then the second goal, then the third goal. Game's basically over by intermission, but none of that would have been possible without the play of Tristan. He also played lights out against Tampa Bay. He's being a little more feisty this season. I don't know if Ron Hextall told him to be like that just because of how he was as a goaltender, but he's definitely, there's a little bit of a heel turn with him. It's not Jordan Binnington level, but he doesn't like it when people get into his crease and stuff. But I think you're starting to see him really transition into one of the better goaltenders in this league. And if he keeps this up, I think he could really transition to being an elite goaltender in this league. I actually, all my listeners, well, I think most of the listeners know this because I've said this about 5,000 times. For you Blue Jackets fans, I predicted Jarry to be a Vezina finalist coming into this season. I was very high on him, and he's going to make a lot of money if that ends up happening and he keeps up this play, because one of the biggest questions I always have with the Penguins, goaltending. It's killed them the last few years in the playoffs, whether it's Matt Murray, Tristan Jarry, this past year, Louis Domingue. As long as they can get at least average goaltending there, they'll be able to at least win a series, if not 2. But if they get this level of goaltending, like 940, 950, it's going to be very hard to see a team win 4 out of 7 against them in a series. So off to a great start. I'm not sure if he'll get the start on Saturday. I think he might but they also have a back-to-back coming up on the Western Canada trip. So I could see them going to DeSmith for this one. He had a good performance in Montreal, but would not be surprised if it is Tristan that does go.
Yeah, I think the thing, I don't know, I always remember last season there was a game against the Blue Jackets Penguins game, and they put DeSmith in for the first period, and he allowed like 2 goals on 8 shots or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is great, I'm having a great time. And then he wasn't playing badly, I don't think. But yeah, they swapped him out at the end of the first period, and then Tristan Jarry came in and just made my life miserable for the next 40 minutes. And I think the Blue Jackets ended up losing that game. So maybe we'll see that happen again, because the Penguins love to make me personally suffer. But obviously, Jake Gensel's probably going to be out, which is a disappointment. I always love to... I say love. I hate to play Jake Guentzel, but he's always fun to watch. He loves to score on the Blue Jackets. Who else? You've mentioned Crosby, you've mentioned Malkin, you've mentioned Letang having great starts to the season. Is there anyone that's had a really great start to the season that is kind of unexpected, someone that's not getting as much talk as they should be? Any young players that have kind of come into the mix?
Yeah, for sure. I think the first one off the top of my head is Kasperi Kapanen. He had a really bad year last year, would always just come in the offensive zone, button hook back, not really do much. But this year, everything, all 3 zones, he's been great. Defensively, he's making much better reads. He's also playing on the PK a lot more, which is something he did really well in Toronto during the 2018-19 season. I'm glad that Mike Sullivan is finally putting him on that unit. It's reaping rewards so far. And he may only have 1 goal in 4 games, but his playmaking ability has been much better compared to where it was last year. He's making some passes that I don't think I've ever really seen him do in a Penguin uniform. One that stood out last night that he got an assist on was great. Then the other one in Tampa Bay, he fed Jeff Carter 4 goals, a nice cross-seam pass. He's playing at a high level this year, and I don't think enough Penguins fans are giving him the credit that he deserves, because, coming into this year, I was down on him. I think the whole fan base was, because he gets that 2-year deal, $3.2 million. You're kind of like, does he really deserve that? He had a bad year last year. You could have used that salary cap space to go out and sign, Niederreiter or something else. But, he's so far proving me, and I think a lot of other people, wrong. And I really hope that he does keep this up later in the year. Maybe it's the cat that he got over the offseason, or it's his flow. I don't know. Something is clicking with him. And I'm really glad to see him playing well. Jason Zucker, our nice Jewish boy, as we coined it on the Locked On Penguins podcast, he's been awesome, and he's finally fully healthy. He plays his tail off every shift. One of the best forecheckers on this team, is shooting the puck a lot more. I think he's definitely reaping the rewards playing with Brian Rust and Evgeny Malkin. I think Marcus Pettersson, he looks like a great fit with Petrie. Defensively, he's been awesome, breaking up a lot of odd man rushes, much better in front of the net. That's been an area of concern that I've had for him during his Penguins tenure, but this year it seems he's really been cleaning up his issues, and he's doing well at that. And he's also contributing a little bit offensively, which we saw him do a little bit towards the end of last season, but before that, not as much. But it's been able to carry over into this season. So those I think are the three main players that I didn't expect to play at this high of a level coming into this season, but I'm really glad that they are. Excuse me, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like the Penguins are kind of trying to emulate that Red Wings style of a couple of years ago. Oh, well, more than a couple of years ago now. But when the old players started to age out, they just replaced them with equally good young players. I feel like the Penguins are kind of trying to emulate that, and it's, for the most part, seems like it's working out pretty okay. In a minute, we're going to flip the script, because Locked On Blue Jackets fans know this, but maybe Locked On Penguins fans don't know. The Blue Jackets had kind of a big off-season, so I'm sure lots of questions there. So we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But first, I want to tell you guys about Bet Online, because it's your number one source for betting football and the start of the new basketball season. I know the Pittsburgh Steelers are having kind of a rough time at the minute, but maybe the Cleveland Cavaliers can do something fun at basketball this season, and you can find all of the odds, props, and lines for those at betonline.net. You can find player development, team matchups, news, podcasts, in-depth analysis on every game. And as always, they remain your continued source for all your sports wagering information, with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. So if you want to, I don't know, put some money on Johnny Gaudreau scoring yet another highlight reel goal for like the 5th game in a row, you can do that at betonline.net. So head to the website today on your laptop or your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action, because BetOnline is where the game starts.
So yeah, Jay, I mean, I noticed that the Jackets had a little bit of a slow start to the season. They lost 3 out of 4 games, but big comeback win on Thursday night against the Nashville Predators, down 2-0 going into the second period, and also 3-1 going into the third, but that didn't matter. The Jackets were able to come back, win that game 5-3. They're now 2-3 on the season. Looks like Johnny Gaudreau had another big game. I'm not looking forward to going up against him for the next 8 years, that's for sure. I didn't like going up against Panarin when he was in the Jackets, but now I have to go against him when he's a Ranger, so I'm still hating myself for that. But Gaudreau is such a fantastic player, and he had a big game last night. What have you noticed from him so far through these first 5 games of the Jacket season?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the Blue Jackets lost their first 3 games of the season. I think not for lack of trying. Obviously, losing Patrick Laine like 25 minutes into the season didn't help, but having Johnny Gaudreau there has kind of soothed that pain a little bit. He's just... It sounds redundant to say this, but like I didn't realize how good he was until I sat down and watched him for like a full game. Obviously, I've seen him play for the Flames. I've seen him play All-Star games, World Championships, etc. But until I sat down and watched him play as a Blue Jacket, suddenly I was like, man, this kid's... I say kid, he's like my age. This guy's really good. Like, just every time he has the puck, I'm like, oh, something cool is going to happen in a minute. He's got 4 goals in his first 5 games, 6 points. Had a highlight reel goal against the Vancouver Canucks on Tuesday night. Had 2 goals on Thursday night against the Nashville Predators, including 1 breakaway. Yeah, 1 was an empty netter, but hey, it still counts. He's a difference maker on this team in a way that I don't even think, that they maybe, like you mentioned, Artemi Panarin. He might be the last big difference maker that this team had. And I think Johnny Gaudreau is at that level, if not more. Obviously, 115 points last season. Will he hit the 100-point mark this season? Maybe, but I'm expecting big on out of Johnny Gaudreau, on and off the ice as well. Like, I've talked about this a lot this offseason, but like, yeah, the on ice stuff is super easy to look at and say, hey, he scores goals. You look at the off ice stuff, he chose Columbus. He left money on the table to stay in Calgary. He left money on the table to go home to New Jersey. He was like, no, I want to play in Columbus. And I think that makes such a big difference for this franchise, because now I feel like fans of other teams, media of other teams, even players on other teams are maybe looking at Columbus and being like, man, does Johnny Gaudreau know something we don't? Like, maybe I want to go there. So I'm excited to see the kind of the ripple effects that come from him saying, hey, Columbus is where I want to spend the next 8 years.
Yeah, that's why it was just so surprising. You're reading like, oh, the Islanders are involved. And I'm like, please do not go to the Islanders, because I don't need to see them have any success. And then, you see the Flyers are obviously involved because he's from Cherry Hill, New Jersey, which is 15 minutes away from Philadelphia. The Devils are involved. And then the Flyers really don't even make a play for him. They made a play for other players, which is just hilarious in itself that they want to compete. But he decides to go to Columbus, and they came in out of nowhere. I was like, wow, like that's quite an interesting move for a team that I don't really know what direction they were going in, because they finished 9th place in the East last year, but they were 20 points behind the Washington Capitals. So it's like, what direction do you really want to go here? And, they spend a lot of money this offseason too. I'm sorry, Jay, I have to bring this up. They signed 4x4 for Eric Branson, former Penguin here. Actually did not play that bad as a Penguin, but was eventually traded when John Marino came up and took his spot a few years ago. But, this is a player this is a team, I think, that has a lot of, I guess, underrated players is the way to say it. I still find it kind of funny that Boone Jenner is the captain of this team. It's just a very random thing.
Hey, you leave Boone Jenner alone.
Hey,
and
good player.
In fairness, this is something that I think about a lot: is does your captain have to be your best player?
That's true.
Nick Foligno got named captain after that 70-point season in 2015, and then never really did it again. And I think the pressure of being captain kind of got to him. And I think he was.
It's okay, Jay. Jacob Trouba is the captain in New York.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes your captain isn't your best player, but since Boone has had the C, he's upped his game in 10 different ways. He had a great start to the season last season, missed a bunch of time with a back injury, unfortunately. But again, he's our top line center at the minute. Is he a 1C level player? No, but do you need an elite center to play between line 8 and Johnny Gaudreau? And so I think he's really going to reap those rewards of being the only guy on the team that can win a face-off and playing between those two guys. So I will hear no Boone Jenner slander on this podcast, but no, I do get what you mean. It is kind of that guy, really, but no, we love Boone Jenner in Columbus.
No, yeah, it's just a very random thing that I've always noticed over the years, and I think he's one of the last players that was on that 2014 team about 8 years ago when they first played in the playoffs. One. Yeah, that's crazy to think about that. He's the only one left. It's just time really flies. But I think the Jackets do have a lot of young talent here. Chikhanov, I think, is one of your better younger players. Gustav Nyquist, he's a veteran, but I like him quite a bit. Jack Roslovich, Gavrikov, Cole Sillinger, I think, is going to be a player at some point. Eric Robinson, I think, as well. The Werenski is still young. He's making a lot of money. When he signed that contract, I was like, good defenseman, but I don't know if he's worth like that price tag, but still a good player. But the player that I think I'm really intrigued about coming in this year for the Jackets is Jakub Voracek. Last year, good playmaker, Jay, but the goal scoring was not there for him. I think he had one of the lowest shooting percentages of his career with Columbus. Are you expecting that to regress to the mean this year? And how has he played so far this season?
Yeah, he's played pretty well so far this season. I do expect him to score more than, I think, 6 goals he had last season. But also on the flip side, I don't look to Jake Voracek for scoring necessarily. I think that was a big thing. Obviously, they traded Cam Atkinson, who was a very prolific goal scorer for the Blue Jackets. But the Flyers needed goal scoring. The Blue Jackets needed someone that could make plays. And so it's turned out to be a really good trade for both teams. Voracek, I think, led the league in primary assists last season. So would I like him to score more than literally 6 goals? Sure. But I also don't. Like, if he hits 10 to 15 goals, I'm pretty happy, I think. We don't look at him for scoring. I think people look at his contract and are like, man, $8.5 million for 6 goals. It's a lot of money to not do anything, but someone's got to make the plays. Someone's got to get the assists. You can't score. Every goal can't be unassisted. So I'm not mad that he doesn't score as much. I do think he's dropped a little bit in the lineup. Obviously, picking up Johnny Gaudreau has kind of bumped him from that top line. I really liked him with Line last season. He's playing on, I call it the babysitter line. So it's him and Cole Sillinger, who is all of 19 years old, and either Chinikov or who's 21, and Kent Johnson, who just turned 20 on Thursday night. So it's just one adult and 2 kids, but that's a really fun line. So I think he's there for some assists, some power play quarterbacking. He does really well at that, even though the power play continues to be cursed. But he's mostly there to be a veteran presence. I think he's got 2 years left in his contract. I would be very surprised if he doesn't re-sign with Columbus for a much lower amount, because he really loves it here. And I think he's been really good for this team. He has good vibes, and I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and Penguins fans need no introduction to Voracek, because he's killed them over the years, especially with his times in Philadelphia. But, Jay, talk to me about your younger players. I mentioned Robinson, Sillinger. When I was reading the Jackets preview, I think from Dom of The Athletic, he really made his way to mention those 2 players and a couple of others as well. What have you noticed from the younger players that are really playing in their first full NHL seasons with Columbus so far?
Yeah, I have been super, super impressed with our younger players. Ken Johnson, Cole Sillinger had I think a really great rookie season last year. Was kind of overshadowed by guys like Zegras, guys like Seider, the oldest man alive, Michael Bunting. But he had 31 points as an 18-year-old in this league. I think that's pretty decent. He was the only player from that first round to play the full season. And I have no complaints about Sillinger's game. Ken Johnson hasn't scored yet. He's getting closer. He was a 5th overall pick last season. He looks really good. He looks like he's figuring it out. He's going to put things together. Chinikov led the preseason, led the NHL in scoring in the preseason. He had 6 goals in 6 games. Hasn't scored yet, but he does have 4 assists in the last 2 games. Went pointless through the first 3, and then had 2 assists versus Vancouver, 2 assists versus Nashville. So again, feels like a matter of time before he breaks through. He's got a really, really good shot. Again, I think kind of overshadowed in his rookie season last year by the emergence of Cole Sillinger, but he's really kind of showing that he has a place in this team. And I mean, that's not even talking about the young players that they didn't have room for on the roster. Kirill Marchenko came over from Russia. He's looking really good. He had 3 goals in his first 2 games with the Cleveland Monsters this season. David Jiricek, 6th overall pick this season. He's in Cleveland. The Blue Jackets just don't have room for all of their young players, which I think is a problem. But if you're going to have a problem, oh no, we have too many good young players, that feels like a pretty good problem to have. So I'm expecting the kids to have a pretty big night against Pittsburgh. Just because, if nothing else, I think the Blue Jackets have 3 players that are over the age of 30 this season. So it is just children. And at a certain point, the kids have to do something. So
can't relate here. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I think the Penguins have the oldest roster in the league by average age. It's 30.3. It's a little more than Washington, but that's the price you pay when you've had a core for a long time.
I would trade many children to have Crosby and Malkin for 15 years. You
can't believe it's year 17 this year. It'll be 20
Crazy.
by that time. I don't understand it all. Last thing, Jay, on the Jackets, goaltending. I think last year, at times it was good from what I remember. Times definitely wasn't. Jonas Korpisalo's on IR. That's not good news, but I would expect the Penguins to see Elvis Merzlikins for this game. How has he played to start this season? Because, I believe, if I'm correct, he signed a deal with them over the offseason. If that's correct, Jay, I think so.
Yeah, so he signed a 5-year extension.
That's right.
This offseason for just over $5 million, which at the minute is looking a little shaky, but this is still only, I think this is his 3rd season in the NHL. He spent a bunch of time in Switzerland before he came over here. So I think a lot of people expect that he's been here longer because he's a little bit older than most young goalies. He has kind of been up and down this season. He wasn't very good against St. Louis. I thought he was fantastic against the Canucks. Let in 2 soft goals to begin with, and then ended up making, I think, 33 of 36 saves to get the win. The game against Nashville, I think he with 3 goals on 26 shots, so not great. But in his defense, I thought that the first 2 goals had a real good case for goalie interference, in that they just kind of ran into him and the puck went in the net in both goals. They didn't challenge, but it is what it is. Maybe I'm biased because that's my guy, but I felt like they had a good argument for goalie interference. So 1 legitimate goal on 26 shots is pretty good. He's a guy that, and I've always said this, he's go big or go home. Like, he is high risk, high reward. He had in his 8-game stretch in his rookie season, he had 5 shutouts. But before that, he, I think, went winless in his first 8 or 9 games with the Blue Jackets, so he has up and downs. Last season, I know he was dealing with some stuff. Obviously, the off season before last season, backup goalie Matisse Kivlenieks passed away. Merzlikins was there. I think that affected him quite deeply in a way that he didn't really process until maybe halfway through the season. So he really struggled last season because of that. I'm hoping that he's doing better now, and he looks good. He's been struggling, but I think partly that's the fact that the average age of the defense is like 21 and a half. So it's real young. I think he's struggling with that, but I'm expecting big things from Elvis. Maybe not against the Penguins. Typically, he doesn't play super well against the Penguins, which upsets me greatly. But over the course of the season, I'm expecting pretty big things from Elvis.
Honestly, you know what? How many Jackets do play well? I think against the Penguins over the years. Hey, it's still going to be a great time, of course. I always love those matchups, but yeah, I would expect him. I'm sure you would to start, and then I still think it'll be Tristan, but you never know. They might throw DeSmith in there just because Tristan is going to see a lot of action, I think, this coming week with the Western Canada trip. But that wraps up the second segment. In the third segment, or the final one, I should say, we're going to give some keys for each team to win this game and a whole lot more. So stick around for that coming up after these messages. All right, welcome back to this special crossover edition of Locked on Penguins and Locked on Blue Jackets. I'm Hunter Hodes. That's Jay Forster. Jay, I'll let you take it with this one.
Cool. So yeah, let's start off with the big one. I guess what do the Penguins need to do to beat the Blue Jackets? Like, is there something in their game that they need to improve? Obviously, going 3-0-1 is pretty good. Are there any flaws in their game? Like, the Blue Jackets don't listen to this podcast. You can tell me. It's not a secret. What do the Penguins need to do to improve?
Yeah, so I think they need to start out the game a bit better. The last couple of starts they've had, the vibe check, as we say, and Jesse Marshall, the Athletic, he likes to say, has not been there. But it didn't really matter last night because the game was basically over by the first intermission. So they need to start out the game a bit better. They need to keep firing a lot of shots on the net, keep defending well, especially and just keep their habits from at home and take them on the road, because they've outscored opponents at PPG Paints Arena so far this year 18-5. That's very good to say the least. So if they can take that part of their game and put it to now for a road blueprint, that's obviously going to be a big key for the Penguins here. Sure, there's, again, that big brother, little brother aspect. I don't think they just have to show up to win the game just because it's a whole different Jackets team. But, the Penguins, they've played well historically against this team, no matter if it's in Pittsburgh, no matter if it's in Columbus. They just got to play a well-structured, disciplined game, continue to get saves from their goaltending. The penalty kill has to continue to improve. It's not been one of their strong suits to start the season. Usually it's one of the 10 best units in the league. But to start out the season, definitely not where I want it to be, though. I thought it took some strides in the right direction against Montreal, Tampa Bay, I should say, and against Los Angeles on Thursday night. So those, I think, are my main key things to win this game. I know Jake Gensel's not going to be there, so the rest of the depth is going to have to step up. They legitimately do not even have any cap space to call someone out. If Jake Gensel cannot play, they're going to have to go 11 forward, 7 defensemen. And I'm not joking on that. They have 83,000 on salary cap, on cap friendly right now. It is a bad time with that. So with Jake not being able to go, they're probably going to have to dress if I had to guess, Chad Weedle's probably going to get some minutes down there. The fourth line will probably just be some combination of Paling and Archibald, something like that. Teddy Bluger, he's been practicing for the last couple of weeks. Something is just not healing right in him. He's been non-contact literally since the season started, has not been able to go to full contact yet. He took regular line rushes today because he was 12th board at the practice, but I don't really think that's going to mean anything for that game. So those, I think, are my main takeaways or my main keys to win this game for the Penguins, and obviously slowing down, your top line with Gaudreau on it. I mean, he's such a great talent, and I hope that he does not join the long list of other players around the league who have killed the Penguins over the years. But Jay, I'll hand it over to you. How do the Jackets, how do they get I guess I'll call it a small upset win over the Penguins here?
No, I think it's fair to say that it would probably be an upset win. Like even the numbers, Blue Jackets are 2-3, Penguins have a winning record. It's interesting you mentioned special teams because that was something I was going to bring up. The Blue Jackets penalty kill has been very good. They are, I believe, 10th in the league right now. They're sitting on about 86%. They had a really good night against Nashville. They killed all 5 of Nashville's minor penalties. The problem comes when they draw penalties, and Game 6 feels very early to start being like, hey, can we just refuse the power play? But I am considering it because the power play has been just awful, just horrific. And I think partially that's because they don't have Line A, who was kind of the big name on the power play. But like Johnny Gaudreau should be able to score on the power play. Jake Voracek is a really good power play assist man. Zach Werenski scored some power play goals in his time. So I don't know why it's not working, but it's not. So it could be a really good excuse for the Penguins to practice their penalty kill without really being scared of the Blue Jackets scoring on them. But I think that's the big key for me is keep the penalty kill strong, figure out the power play, try not to allow a million goals. Cause I feel like if you get into a goal scoring competition with the Penguins, you're maybe not going to come out on top of that one. Like it kind of worked with the Canucks. It kind of worked with the Preds. I don't think it's going to work with the Penguins. So you want to be tighter defensively. And I think the key for me, like the main key is, like you say, I want that top line rolling. Keep that together. Brad Larson has kind of been guilty of doing some kind of line blending early in the season, which I get it. If things aren't working, change them up. But I feel like you should give things more than like 4 shifts before you accept that they're not working. That top line is Gaudreau, Jenner, and Gus Nyquist at the minute, which I don't hate. Gus Nyquist is very much kind of like I've been calling him Wish.com Patrick Laine. He only scores empty net goals and shorthanded goals, but he scores goals. He's been really good on that line for an older guy. He's got some serious wheels. And so I don't hate that top line. And I think that's going to be, honestly, Johnny Gaudreau feels like he's going to be the key to this matchup. Another player that I just want to mention before we wrap up with some predictions, Nick Blankenburg has been phenomenal for this team. He missed the first 3 games. He was a healthy scratch, drew into the 4th game, had 4 shots on goal, 5 hits, was phenomenal against the Canucks last night or Thursday night against the Preds. He had an assist on the Johnny Gaudreau breakaway goal, and then he scored the game-winning goal with like 1 minute and 18 seconds left. He's just been phenomenal. He's been our best defenseman, which is insane when you think about how much you're paying some other defenseman to basically not do what Nick Blankenburg is actually doing. But he's my player to watch. I think Penguins have to keep an eye on him because I think he's only small. He's only like 5'9". So whether it's that teams just don't see him until it's too late or what, but he's a guy that I think the Penguins are going to get burned by if they're not careful.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely have my eye on him. That's for sure. Again, it looks like another young player that's really making his way into this lineup. And as you did say, yeah, Jay, like that top line is definitely going to be, I think Mike Sullivan's going to try to match the Crosby line against, even though there won't be any Jake Gensel there. And just to wrap up with the special teams, yeah, the Penguins power play, I think they're coming into last night, they were 4 for 12, 4 for 13 to start the season. Kind of I think what you would expect from a Penguin power play. You don't want to give them too many chances. They've definitely cleaned some stuff up from last season, but when the power play is bad, it's just the zone entries aren't there. and they're just coughing up the puck way too often. So hopefully the PK will also start to garner some more momentum after a rough start to the season. But yeah, we can wrap up here with some predictions. I guess with me, I'm never good at these just because I feel like the opposite always happens with this. Though that said, I might try something different. I think it's going to be a close game. I'm kind of predicting a 3-2 kind of type of game. I think the Penguins do end up winning this game, especially if Tristan Jarry starts. It's not going to be maybe a pretty game, but I do think they're going to come out with the win here. Eventually, someday, I think the Jackets are just going to break this losing streak that they have against them. But I'm not really sure if it's going to be this game going into the Western Canada trip. But how do you see this game playing out?
Yeah, I've been going with my guys all season because I feel like if I don't root for them, who will? So I'm going to say it's going to be a 4-3 game. I think the Jackets take it in overtime. They have an overtime win already. And so I think if you can get to overtime, I think Johnny Gaudreau is just in overtime is just magic. That feels like the key to me. The Blue Jackets have struggled holding a lead. They've been, I think they've been trailing going into the third period every game so far, and then they've come back and won the last two. So fingers crossed for that. One final prediction before we wrap it up. Who is going to open the scoring for the Pittsburgh Penguins?
It's a good question, to be honest with you. I would say
Normally
Jake.
I would say Jake, but
I would say him
right
because
now.
I would want to see the meme that you put on your Twitter for it.
Yes.
But
it's my favorite meme. I never get to use it.
I know. Like, of course, like the day before the game, it looks like he's probably not going to play because he's not at practice. Hopefully it's not like a concussion or anything like that. But man, that's a good question. I'm gonna go with Evgeny Malkin. You know, he's had a great start to the season. Scored the first goal in Montreal in their first road game. Actually scored the first 2 goals, the only 2 goals for the Penguins in that game. They lost 3-2 in overtime. I'm going to say he opens up the scoring here. He just looks like he has a different demeanor to him this season. His skating is the best I've seen in 3 years. Playmaking wise, he's been awesome. He's not really turning the puck over that much. I think he opens the scoring in a big way for this one.
Yeah. I'm going to go for the Blue Jackets. You know what? Boone Jenner hasn't scored yet this season. I feel like he's overdue. And because you slandered him earlier, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with Boone Jenner opening the scoring for the Blue Jackets. So if people want to catch up with the Penguins, I don't understand it, but I can respect it. Where can people find you and your show if they want to learn more about Evgeny Malkin, for example?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. The show's Twitter is at @L_Penguins. The show is free and available on all platforms, Spotify, Apple, YouTube now, everything else. Yes, Jackets fans, I actually run a pretty good objective Penguins podcast. So if you want to keep up with your main rival, I will gladly take that. So I'm always excited for these games. Even though, again, it's not one of the main Penguins rivals, but it's still in close proximity that, you know, it basically has to be at least a mini rivalry. But Jay, for Penguins fans out there that listen to my show, you know, where can they find your beloved show? And if they want to go listen to a Blue Jackets centric podcast every now and then, hopefully more often.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think as the Blue Jackets get better, that rivalry is going to get bigger. It's going to be in a couple of years. I think it's going to be real fun. But you can find Locked On Blue Jackets wherever you get Locked On Penguins, every podcasting app of choice. We're over on YouTube. You can find the show on Twitter at @LO_Blue Jackets. You can find me if you want to mix in some dog pictures or some Star Wars opinions with your hockey. I know Hunter and I have a lot of conversations about Star Wars in the off season. So you can find all that at _Jacob Forster, JAKOB FORSTER. Huge shout out to everyone for making this your first listen of the day every day, or your first watch. Locked On Blue Jackets and Locked On Penguins, free and available literally wherever you can think to find us. And you're never going to have to get behind a paywall for either podcast. So you might as well start listening because it's free, and who doesn't love free? So on Monday, I will be breaking down the Blue Jackets game. Hunter will be breaking down the Penguins game on Locked On Penguins. And so you should check those shows out. And until then, make sure you stay locked on.